Guys, I'm wearing an old t-shirt that I had for a few years and misplaced. And if you notice the spectral appearance of it, I'm going to be watching Buzzfeed Unsolved for another holiday marathon. This time, it's Valentine's Day. So, let's start with the chilling exorcism of Annalise Michelle. And by the way, I've seen it. I've seen and heard about this case a lot, and it freaks me the fuck out. I mean, seriously, it's like I don't know, it's like a weird combination of mental thing mixed with religious brainwashing, but it sketches me the hell out because I think they may have used audio tapes in this one, like the audio of the exorcisms, which is like super sketchy. Anyway, let's get on with it. 3, 2, 1, play.
So we're about to discuss a case of demonic possession so chilling and controversial that it actually became the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
I actually
what
saw
follows is
Legal
the true
Eagle's
story
video
that
on
inspired
this.
that, The Exorcism of Annalise Michelle.
Ooh.
It's one of the few actual cases of demonic possession that went to court.
Actually, I think Legal
Wait, did they,
Eagle
like, sue the
should
demon?
react
You'll
to
find out. Okay.
Born in
the actual
1952
case.
in the small town of Klingenberg in Bavaria, Germany, Annalise Michelle was raised as a strict Catholic and was described as very bright and likable. In September 1968, when Annalise was 16 years old, she experienced her first episode of losing consciousness, and later that night, she felt as if something was pressing down on her chest, pinning her to her bed. 11 months later, in August 1969, a similar event occurred, and her mother took Annalise to their family doctor, Dr. Vogt, and a neurologist, Dr. Luthi, who examined her and even ran an EEG, a brain scan, but found nothing wrong. They hypothesized
Maybe it's
that
like
it could possibly be a
psychological.
form of seizure. Over the next 3 years, Annalise would have 2 more similar episodes and was prescribed 2 medications, an anticonvulsant medication and an anti-seizure medication called Dilantin. On both occasions, an EEG would come back normal, with some minor irregular patterns, but nothing that would definitively explain her symptoms.
What year was this?
This was in 1969.
Okay, I'm fine with that so far. That sounds real.
Okay.
Little spiders on me. Sorry if I blew it on you.
Well, you did.
It was in spring 1973 that things took a turn for the stranger.
Oh,
Annalise began to
Jesus.
hear knocking sounds in her bedroom. Sounds
It's
her
the house
sisters were hearing
settling.
as well. But even more alarming, Annalise also reported hearing a voice damning her to hell. Her mother was further rattled when she witnessed Annalise furiously staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary with, quote, eyes turned black, jet black, and her
Oh,
hands
Jesus.
seemed to turn into thick paws with claws.
What? Those some chunky paws on her daughter.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You know what? Let's move on. Let's not get caught up on the bare hands. I shouldn't have even said that part.
Yeah, we can't move past her having paws.
I knew you weren't gonna like that. I'm just
She
gonna
had
move
little
past.
kitty cat paws.
In September
I think
1973,
they were more like
in a
demonic
neurological visit
Hellcat
with Dr.
marble
Luthi,
paws.
Annalise described horrific visions of demon faces
Maybe
that
it's
were
like
tormenting her,
schizophrenia
and
mixed
stated
with
that
the-
she felt the devil was inside
mixed with
her.
the
She also
seizure?
reported smelling something that had the aroma of burnt feces, a stench that
Oh,
many around
dude.
her would report smelling at later times.
I don't even
Why
want
do
to
all
know
these
what
people know
burnt
what
shit.
feces smells
I don't
like?
even
I can
want.
imagine. It
I
just
don't even
smells
want to know what that
feces
smells
with a
like.
Lit on
A little,
fire?
a little smokier.
Fucking,
Oh, fuck, is that a bee? See what you get? This is what you get. Yes, sick. Oh, fuck.
Around this time, Annalise's mother
Just
described
a
these
little
strange
bee.
occurrences to Dr. Luthi.
You leave it alone.
And Mrs. Michelle
It'll just leave you
advised
alone.
them to consult a Jesuit, a claim that Dr. Luthi would later deny.
Yeah, that's a bad doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he said that,
Don't go see it.
But then again, it was like the
Whether
early
or not
70s.
that's true, the family definitely searched for a priest and eventually found a priest named Father Alt. In November
Father Alt.
1973, Annalise met with a
Father
Freudian
Alternate
psychiatrist who diagnosed
thing.
her as a neurotic with possible epilepsy.
Okay,
and
if
another
someone's
neurologist
Freudian,
found
they're
she
a
had,
little bit
quote,
sketch.
epileptic patterns, and took her off Dilantin and put her on Tegretol, a much stronger drug. In July 1975, Annalise's extremely
Is
odd
that
behavior
the? Is
worsened.
that the? Is
She
that
barely
the?
slept
that-
and prayed fervently all night.
that-
She ate
the
spiders
house
and flies,
from-
and even licked
From
her own
okay,
urine
that's
up from the
that's
floor.
that's
She
nasty.
destroyed rosaries, crucifixes, and holy pictures on the walls. Annalise also exhibited strength that was, quote,
This is
close to superhuman.
so.
Throwing her sister, quote, as if she were a rag doll.
So you'd
and
be
incredibly
surprised at
was
how strong
observed
people can
effortlessly
get.
squeezing an apple with one hand until, quote, Fragments exploded throughout the room.
I bet I could squeeze an apple till it exploded.
I bet you $1 million you couldn't.
3 days
Here we
later.
go. I mean, this is Germany. This is before preservatives.
You hear that in the distance? It's the excuse
Where
train
preservatives
coming.
made come from?
Wait for it. You're full of shit, Ryan. We're going.
But now you get to see 2 hands.
What? She definitely used 2 hands.
You said 1 hand.
Okay. But still, that's not like an amazing metric.
A priest named Father Rodewick, a man considered an expert on exorcisms by his peers, reported that he was convinced that Annalise was possessed. And
I
after
think she had a
deliberation with the
mental
bishop, the
disability.
exorcism
I mean,
on Annalise
schizophrenia or
was
some
formally
shit.
approved. It was to be carried out by a
With
priest named
religious
Father Renz.
undertones,
On
like,
September
tied
24th,
into it.
1975, the first exorcism rite was performed. Father Renz allowed some of the exorcism sessions to be recorded, and 42 audio recordings of the exorcisms were made in total. I'm gonna play some clips from those
Ah,
recordings,
shit.
but fair warning, these recordings are perhaps
Be right
the
back
most
and get it,
disturbing
Cal.
pieces of audio I've ever heard.
Ich hab verrichtet, so dass ich in dem Valentine bin.
I got my cow.
Ihre Nase noch so lang, bis es
This cow needs a bath.
Für uns gibt's kein Zurück. Nie. In alle Ewigkeit.
I hate
She's
this.
screaming. She's giving it 110%.
I mean, do you think that sounds like it came out of a girl? Like,
Yes, it sounds like a girl doing a funny voice.
I do voice acting.
your unrelenting skepticism is exhausting.
I mean,
It
I can,
drains me of all
I can do a
happiness
male
and
voice.
energy, and I hope you know
but
that.
not now, because I am scared as fuck.
Und der Nero, der Kain und der Hitler.
Really?
Das ist der Sechste? Oh, den haben wir gelogen. Den habt ihr dazu
That's all. We're all here. It's all, I ran out of evil people to think of. The blonde man from Die Hard is also in here. Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. Heath Ledger's Joker. Not Jack Nicholson. He was too cartoonish.
You had your fun,
Yeah, I've had my fun.
Okay.
Annalise also named Fleischmann as one of her demons and provided accurate details of the real Fleischmann, who was a priest in the 1500s that was kicked out of the church for bad behavior. These details came as an icy shock to Father Alt, who claims Annalise would have no way of knowing Fleischmann.
That is the only thing that is strange to me. All the other stuff is just things that a person could do.
To learn more about demonic possession, we sat down with Father Gary Thomas, a Vatican-approved exorcist, who explained to us different signs of
Gonna put
possession.
the cow
All of these
in this
Annalise
little
had.
green
One
box
would
I
be an
have.
aversion to the sacred. So a person walks in this church and can't look at a crucifix, and you only see the whites of their eyes. Another would be knowledge
Okay,
of
now
hidden
I'm just
things,
thinking
where
of
the
that
demon
one
will
scene
begin to
from
tell
the
you things
Exorcist
about
movie,
yourself that the person themselves
and with,
will have
like,
no way of knowing. Another would be
whoever,
possessing a kind
you know
of
that fuck Jesus,
inordinate,
fuck you scene,
physical
when she was like
strength that
stabbing her,
possess. Then the
her
last
inner
sign is
thighs with the
sort of
crucifix.
epileptic-like seizures on a person's face and the movement of their arms and legs in a way where they lose complete control.
By May, Annalise became even
You
worse,
know,
banging her head against the wall and
I
biting herself
personally
and
believe
others,
that demons
to the point
can
where
be
her family had to tie her up
warded
to
off
prevent
with
her from hurting
proper
herself.
mental
But
health
most dangerously,
and proper
Annalise
medication,
refused to
which
eat.
are kind of like
She
the
described it
potions
as,
to
quote,
reverse the
not being
possession.
permitted to eat. Despite being quite frail,
Oh,
likely weighing
jeez.
under 80 pounds, she exhibited great strength. when
Yeah,
people
because she
tried
wants to
restrain
eat
her.
I
food.
just feel bad for her at this point.
Yeah, I do feel bad for her.
She's definitely tortured.
By June, Annalise's entire face was sunken. She also refused a doctor visit, even though she had a very high fever. On June 30th, Annalise had another exorcism, only saying please, absolution. The next morning, her
What does
family went to her room
absolution
and found her
mean?
dead. Despite seeking
Yep.
medical attention early on, Annalise refused to submit to medical attention in the end, as she and her family ultimately placed all faith of recovery into the exorcisms.
And
She died of
that's when
starvation
the
at age
Darwinism comes
23
in
after
too.
67 exorcisms, weighing only 68 pounds at the time of her death.
Do you think that just
Jesus,
made her,
that reminds me of
like,
this
buy
one
into
girl.
it more? If
in this
people
program
started
I'm in,
exercising me
he was like-
on the reg,
She's very
Exercising you in the
skinny.
yeah, I might eventually be like.
But that's
I
like due
guess
to some
I'm
medical
demon.
issues. She had some medical issues when she was younger, so she's
predates
Yeah, all the.
So she's just really skinny
or any of that stuff.
After her death,
nowadays.
Annalise's parents and the two
But
priests
she
were
should still be
accused of
healthy.
negligent homicide, and the case went to trial in 1978. What follows are the two sides of that case. First, let's review the position of the defense. The defense presented eyewitness testimony and formally submitted the recordings as evidence of possession, an idea that the court never seemed to take seriously. From a non-religious standpoint, the defense argued Annalise was permitted to deny medical treatment, as was her lawful right. For what it's worth, medical treatment
Well,
might
was she
have
still a
included
minor?
tranquilizing her, force-feeding her, and electroshock therapy.
Yeah, she would have been a lot better
all presumably
nowadays.
against her will, end quote. Family friend Thea Hine recalled in her testimony that
Honestly,
in 1976, a few months before Annalise's death,
Because I keep looking at
Annalise
this through a
reportedly,
modern day
quote,
perspective and not
begged
like
on her
a at the
knees
time
for
perspective,
Hine to
when I
not
should be
suggest
thinking like
medical
at the time
attention to
perspective,
anybody.
which is
Also
kind of
worth
like
noting is the fact that
freaking
Father
bedlam.
Alt actually looked for medical help towards the end. And on May 30th, his friend Dr. Richard Roth visited Annalise out of what he claims was scientific curiosity and not as a physician.
Really?
He just was like, look, I'm not here as a doctor. I just want to see some of this crazy shit.
I know, who fucking says that?
I want to see this girl eat some spiders.
That's like something you say when you go to the zoo, not when you go to see someone that's tied up.
That is a bad man right there.
Okay,
In his visit, Dr. Roth claims Annalise had no external injuries, although Father Renz noted she had several bruises, a swollen cheek, and black eyes. An interesting contradiction, to say the least. Dr. Roth also denied saying, quote, "There are no injections against the devil," end quote.
There are prescriptions against the devil.
Curiously, in spite of all the supposed epileptic attacks, an autopsy revealed Annalise had a healthy brain with no damage that could have caused epileptic
Dude.
seizures. Quote, "Not even on a microscopic level," end
I
quote.
don't even know how the hell that even
say about
works.
I mean, you know, look, I'm not a, what's a brain scientist?
A neurologist?
There we go. Sorry, it's been a long day. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know what the.
it's funny that you said that because the neurologist said the exact same thing.
He said I'm not a neurologist.
Probably it sounds like it. You might as well.
Look, I don't fucking know.
I don't know. Go visit a Jesuit. Jesus.
Just get your shit
I don't even know
out of my
what
office.
I don't even know what the hell a
Even
Jesuit
more
is.
curious was the court's seeming non-consideration of facts, such as her pupils being unusually dilated and the absence of ulcers on her body, which are frequently found in victims of starvation.
Okay, all right.
Any quotes on that?
I mean, you know.
This is great. The tables have turned, in my opinion.
Now, let's review the position of the prosecution. The prosecution argued that Annalise had epilepsy and psychosis, and that the parents and two priests were liable
Yeah,
for
I think
failing to
Lance
act to save her
upset
life.
her right
The
now.
defense tore
Up
down
on her
notions of
Bible stuff.
possession. They questioned the credibility of Father Alt, with the conclusion from two experts that Father Alt exhibited signs of schizophrenia.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Yeah, that's weird.
That's weird.
He wasn't the guy that was doing the exorcisms, but he was the guy that initially helped Annalise in the beginning.
The prosecution also argued that the medications given successfully suppressed the epilepsy-like seizures,
That
and
could have been
argued
it.
that suppression morphed into, quote, "a delusional psychosis associated with epilepsy," end quote. They
Brains are
argued that
weird.
Annalise's psychosis was exacerbated by the exorcism, which only played into her fantasy. To piggyback on that, Annalise often went through phases between exorcisms where she behaved normally, even though she would behave as a possessed person during exorcisms. It's unclear if the epilepsy-like seizures were stopped by medication or if they actually stopped on their own. But Annalise's psychotic visions predate the alleged medical suppression.
Weird.
Weird.
Sorry.
Basically, they're saying that the psychosis was brought on by the suppression of the drugs.
Yeah.
But this psychosis
happened-
predates the
predated,
drugs.
yeah.
Exactly.
In the end, the court ruled in favor of the prosecution, sentencing the four defendants to 6 months in prison with suspension for 3 years and payment for all court costs. The court ruled that Annalise was unable to make decisions for herself and should have been forced to submit to medical care. Professor Felicitas D. Goodman, an author of a book on the case, notes the theories that Annalise was epileptic were presented as, quote, "a statement of undisputable fact, not conjecture, as in fact they had been," end quote.
How do you tell the difference between possession and mental health?
Sometimes
Yeah.
both are going along side by side. You have to determine what is the root cause of the suffering of this individual. You start out with a discernment, and the discernment involves myself and a whole team of people. I have a medical doctor, a clinical psychologist, and a psychiatrist. In fact, a formal
See,
exorcism
this guy
only
is
happens
smart.
as the last resort.
This
Given
guy
the
is
evidence that
smart.
we've seen and all the strange occurrences and the voices, I
Again.
think there is sufficient evidence to not conclusively rule out that she was possessed beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
So you acknowledge that.
I acknowledge there's a lot of factors in this case.
I am agreeing
personally
with
think
Shane
there's
on this
something
one.
going on with mental health, and I'm also think that 67 exorcisms probably don't don't leave your mind in a good spot.
I could see both sides. I could see how it would be mental health. I could see how it would be possession. I lean towards possession. That being said, she should have gone to the hospital.
Yeah, get that girl to a hospital, please.
She's possessed or not, fucking force her to go to the hospital and let the doctors be like, holy shit, the shit's floating around.
PSA, if your kid's eating spiders.
Don't take him to an exorcist. Take him to an exorcist, but do it at the hospital.
No, don't take them straight to the hospital.
You can do both. That's what I'm saying. You can do both. You can have it happen at the hospital.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Regardless of the court ruling, many have debated what actually led to Annalise's death. Was it a case of mental illness, possibly epilepsy? Or was this a legitimate case of demonic possession? Whatever the real reason may be, the case of Annalise Michel is a tragedy and will always remain unsolved.
There's a little more left.
I think we're done here.
Still squeezing the apple.
You're not crushing.
I'm gonna get some juice out of this thing.
I don't know what's making me happier, the fact that you can't get it, or the struggle on your face as you see your case slipping through your fingers.
This
like
is not
grains
the
of
case
sand.
slipping through my fingers.
Just like grains of sand just falling.
Okay, so my personal stance is people who have severe mental issues could be possessed by demons if they truly exist. And that's a big if. Why don't you guys tell me below? And I am going to watch some videos of kittens to recover from this very scary reaction video. And see you in the next one.